Okay, folks, I want to welcome you to Lakeside Speedway here tonight. Actually, we're here for the Tom Carrick Memorial, but thought we might give you just a little preview of the new CARB Temporary Hall of Fame. And I've got one of the Hall of Fame members here with me tonight, Bud Honeycutt, and Bud is going to explain or tell us a little bit about some of these pieces of artifacts that are here in the CARB Temporary Museum. First of all, Bud, man, I saw you race a bunch of times with my cousin Charlie and whoever.
Sure did. Had a lot of fun.
And I really enjoyed that, but I figured you've written a book about a lot of this stuff, so, man, you ought to have some information for us. First of all, like I say, we're going to start with this jacket, and probably without this guy, none of this would be here.
Yeah, without Clyde Ellis, why, he's the man that when they started this place, they ran out of money in a short time, and Clyde Ellis picked up the tab and spent several $100,000 for the completion of Lakeside Speedway. So we owe him one great big thank you. Clyde's no longer with us, but quite a guy and a lifetime friend of mine, and just was quite a race car driver and an entrepreneur in business. Had the Seaberg Muffler Company over in Northtown, very successful business, which his family still run. So he's quite a guy, and we all owe him a big thank you for Lakeside Speedway.
I was going to say, I called him Mr. Racing. I didn't know how else to put it because, man, he was in it, around it, and took care of it. So, kind of a caretaker. So like you say, without Clyde, we wouldn't have none of it. But tell you what, let's move on down here to the next table, and maybe you can show us some stuff down there.
We called him Mr. Lakeside because Mr. Lakeside Speedway is what we should have called him. And he said, oh, no, forget that. You don't need to do that. But he was quite the man.
A humble guy.
Very much a humble man.
Let's move on down to the table here, and we've got some pictures if you want to pick any of them up or whatever you'd like to do. Why, anything you want to pick out?
We have Judd Larson, probably the finest dirt track driver I ever saw, and I've seen a lot of them. And I think that A.J. Foyt would agree with me that he was probably one of the finest sprint car drivers he ever raced on dirt with. And this other one we've got with Bobby Allison, Charlie Kraft, who was very instrumental in helping getting this place go, and Rusty Wallace. Good picture of all three of them. And, of course, Rusty Wallace and Bobby Allison, both NASCAR drivers. And Charlie Kraft in the cheese-colored 4 was our mentor here about a lot of things, and he did a lot to help racing, a lot like Clyde Ellis. He was always there to help people with it.
I was going to say he wasn't the fastest racer, but I know he won a lot of awards for sportsmen and stuff like that, but he had his share.
He won a lot of races, too. I tell you what, I've ran behind him a lot of times when I was running good, so that tells you he's a good race car driver.
Okay, what do you got next?
The next one here we got Eddie Levitt, Jan Opperman, and Dick Sutcliffe. And, of course, Dick Sutcliffe and Levitt are both local boys. And Jan Opperman, he raced all over the country, one of the top drivers, and just won everywhere he went. And so that's quite a picture, a lot of history there.
And, you know, these weren't just racers that raced in the area. These were racers that raced at Lakeside. So a lot of this memorabilia and stuff that's in here kind of circles around Lakeside.
It sure does. Very much so.
Well, we'll get our cameraman here. We're going to move over we are over here at a long counter now that runs down just about half the length of the room here at Lakeside Speedway. Bud, tell us what we've got here on the table.
Okay, what we've got right here, John Luderin, who ran the Kansas City Auto Racing Association for many years, for about 25 years, and promoted their races at Riverside and Olympic Stadium. So this was the timing lights from the Kansas City Racing Association, and John Luderin's widow, Carol, called us and said, you know, I've got all that stuff. They had the timing equipment. Could you guys do something with it? And I said, we sure put it in the Hall of Fame. So Lowell Christie went over and picked it up, and so here it is here, and it's I ran past that a lot of times qualifying in at Olympic. Why, that was our qualifying deal for our time trial.
So about what era was this? Would it be like 70s?
In the 60s. The late 50s and through the 60s.
Okay. Yeah. Now the timing apparatus on the bottom, I think Rick was telling me, our cameraman, Rick Darling, which I appreciate helping us out. Rick said they found this in a suitcase here at Lakeside.
Yeah, now that I'm not familiar with that one, but it's probably very similar to this unit, maybe a better, a little more refined unit than what the other one was there. So that's
Okay, let's move on down here a little bit. I see a helmet and a few more pictures up on top. And boy, some of those are really bruised up.
This helmet was brought by Howard House, the gentleman racer. I mean, the midget race guy and one of the finest gentlemen you ever meet. He brought a steering wheel from his race car and his helmet. And I think this is brand new under just today, wasn't it, Rick? So he brought that in today.
I love this mask down here. It's a pair of goggles with looks like a dirt shield to keep from getting hit in the face. Of course, these were all open cockpit cars, so man, that's pretty neat, Rick. I don't know if you can get that, but you're new on the camera, so we'll get what we get, okay?
Well, and those really, I used to go to the shoe shop in my neighborhood and take goggles over there and have him put the leather on there, riveted on there, so snap it on to where we could keep that mud out of our face, because cars up in front of you just tear your face up with the mud thrown back at you, you know. And the people in the stands don't realize that the drivers are fighting that. So
we're getting more in-car camera stuff, more and more all the time, and you see how those dirt clods fly around. So I know what you're talking about now, but I think this little book right here, you've got something to do with this, right?
Yeah, I used to always be telling these racing stories, and so people told me, said, you know, you really ought to write a book and put that down on paper, you know. And I said, man, high school dropout writing a book, that doesn't make much sense. My English teacher would never believe that, you know. And after I retired from the lumber business, I spent 50 years in the lumber business. When I retired from that, my wife said, maybe you ought to do something about that book and writing a book. And I think she just wanted to get me out from under her feet. So anyway, I started writing the book, and I started on it and worked a little bit with it, and then I just kind of quit. And my middle son, Gary, lives in Columbia, Missouri, said, how you doing on that book, Dad? And I said, well, haven't done much on it. And he says, well, you know, a guy told me when I was growing up that when you start a project, you got to finish it. So you need to put so many hours a day set aside for that. I said, in other words, you want me to practice what I preach? He said, exactly. So took his advice, and I went back and finished it. It took me about a little over a year to finish it. And I've met so many nice people that have bought the book and were there, and they say, well, I was there when that happened. And I featured about 36 of the drivers I raced with in there and tell you something about the drivers. And it turned out very nice. I was very glad. I'm glad I did it. And
folks, in case you're wondering, it's up on the wheel, and I know Rick's still got a few more for sale, right? Where can they get a copy?
Well, actually, the only place that's got them now, I've sold clear out of them, but they have them at the Hall of Fame at Knoxville, Iowa. They still have about 30 of them up there in the Hall of Fame. So
you better hurry. They're going fast. Let's say something about this trophy. I'll read it. I hope. I don't have my glasses, but I think it says Riverside Stadium, and it says Champion Sportsman Division Bud Honeycutt. I'll be darned. How about that, Bud? What year?
That was 1962, and my son had the trophy up and had a trophy room in his house, and he'd made the kind of a racing room. And so I told him, I said, you know, we ought to take that trophy and take it over to put it in the Hall of Fame over there so other people can enjoy it too. And he said, that's a good idea. So anyway, I brought it on over here, and I'm glad I did. And it was the biggest trophy I'd gotten. And back in those days, they didn't give very big trophies. And this one was a really nice size one. So I was really pleased to get that one. And
I was going to say, most of the time it's just a small trophy and a kiss from the trophy girl.
That's it. Yeah.
Okay,
this was better than the trophy.
Let's move on down here a little bit. And maybe you know some of these tracks. If you do, I shout out there, put that up for Rick to see.
I think this is
Rick, do you know who that is?
I think that may have been possibly Riverside, and that's Jim McMurray in the 48 car. That's an all aluminum car, and I think it's still in existence somewhere. I don't know who has it now, but it was an all aluminum car, and it looked kind of squared off there, but it was lightweight, and it ran good, and Jim was a good little driver. He also, after he quit racing, he became a assistant flagman and worked several years as a flagman there, and a good guy.
All right, let's move on. And, of course, so many of the shots that we've got, I wish we could tell you who the photographer was, but I have no idea. This is Marshall, but, man.
Rick can probably tell us more about Marshall, Missouri than I can. I raced there some. It was always a very competitive place to race. A bunch of good drivers and a bunch of good people down there. And do you know who these guys are, Rick?
I just know who was on the very top of that corner going out of the shot.
And that would be who? And that's
up here.
You just barely sit back over. It's just a wreck that happened there.
Okay. Let's move on. I think this bottom shelf here is pretty much all CARB stuff, the way it looks from different plaques and stuff from over the years.
Yeah, it looks like they've got quite an arrangement of plaques, and I've got a couple of plaques at home. One for Dancing Sammy Callahan, the flagman at Olympic, and one from Ott Haggard. They had no family to pick them up, so I picked them up. I'm going to bring them over here and share them with the CARB Hall of Fame here. So
let's move on down to the next big trophy here. Up here on the top, it says Rayleigh Goodwin, presented
by Kathy and Charlie Heritage. And I think that would have been 1978?
Yeah, something like that.
And that was a trophy that these people, Charlie Heritage was a former president of CARB, and really a fine man that did a lot for racing, always a race fan his whole life. And every year they gave a trophy out to one of the local drivers, and they always had their name on the trophy and gave it to, and it was a very nice and you're always very proud to have one of these. It was a Jerry Well Memorial Award, and Jerry was such a great guy in Kansas City and helped so many people with their race cars, and so it made a special award. I remember getting that award, being a Jerry Well Award. I was really very, very proud and very honored to have that.
One of the things in racing that kind of shows the accomplishment, of what you've done over the years. Let's move on down a little bit, and we've got some old Coops here. This has to be way back there. Rick, I don't know. Can you get that there, buddy?
And there again, is this a Marshall area here? I'm not sure.
It's up here, I think.
That might be Riverside Stadium, and I'm not sure if I know who I see that number 4 in there, but I don't remember Charlie Kraft having a 4 that looked like that.
Yeah. Some vintage stuff from back a few years. Well, that's got to be what, 50s probably?
Oh yeah,
early 50s.
Early 50s there.
Yeah. Pre V8.
Yeah, that's about it. They had V8s, but they had the flatheads, flathead Fords.
I think down here I recognize this. I could be wrong, but aren't these Billy Deckman at I-70?
I believe you're correct. I believe that's very true, yeah. And you probably follow that better than I do on that, because I wasn't sure who that was. Now that you mention it, and I see where Ron Suman was the engine builder for them. He was quite an engine builder. The guy was very good. And
I think this might have been the wreck, if I remember right. I think Billy got hurt in this, if I remember right, and was out for a while. Yeah. Hit the wall, and, man, sparks flying.
It was such a fast racetrack. When you hit the wall at I-70, it was a tough. You went home and rebuilt a car. You had to build a new one.
I was going to say it was dollar bills all over the place, wasn't it? That kind of brings us down here to the end. And, Rick, if you can get a whole picture of that, I would appreciate it. But that's part of the reason why we are here tonight. And this is the Tom Carrick Memorial, which is tonight, and I know I don't know if you raced against Tom, but Tom was probably in the end of the era there where you were in.
Yeah, in fact, Tom, when I worked for Clyde Ellis at the old Lakeside, Tom was one of the hot dog racers out there then, and always very competitive, and their whole family's been involved in it. His son Tim, I don't know how many years he's been involved in racing, but the whole family raced, and it was a family thing. And Tom said, "Racing is family," and that's so very true. Racing really is family.
And of course, they do a lot of work getting sponsors and friends and different people together. I'm not sure what the purse is going to be tonight for this race, but it's a sizable increase.
$2,000 to win, and they have bumped that purse on donations they get from people that want to take part in it. So,
like I say, some of Tim's sponsors, I think, and like I say, family, friends, and they donate all that money.
And some of the people, McCarthy Chevrolet is one of the big sponsors of it too, and they're very good and very helpful to racing.
I think I saw on a T-shirt tonight, 18th annual. I can't read the date, but anyway, I'm pretty sure it's 18th annual.
I believe you're right. Sounds right to me.
Well, Bud, let me say thank you a lot, buddy, for coming in here and helping us out. And folks, I'm not sure. I don't think this is quite open to the public just yet. They're working on trying to get, what would that be, south door to where they can let people up into the suites here so that you can come in and view this for free. Not for free, actually. It's donations. They want people to donate money if they could. A lot of great stuff about the racing history of Kansas City, which is really just stacked with racers people that have went on to, do big things. But once again, Bud, let me thank you. And like I say, check Lakeside's website, and you can find out when they're going to be having this south door open, and you'll be able to come up and see this. It's really some neat stuff. Of course, CARB's been looking for a home for a lot of this stuff, and Mike Johnson and Don Mars and them.
While we're thinking of it, we want to give you a big thank you for all you have done. Being Charlie Kraft's cousin, you were around racing, grew up around all your life, and the time, your own time and money you've taken to go out and do all the movies of some of the races around different parts of the country. And we really want to thank you for that, because you really put yourself out there to do it, and you do a very good job of it. Everybody is very pleased to see one of your videos, because they know it's going to be good.
Well, thank you, Bud. I appreciate that. I'd like to tell you it's work, but it's not. It's fun.
That's great.
But anyway, folks, check that website and find out when Lakeside will have that open. And you got to come up here and see this, because, man, it is Kansas City at its best.